Hello everyone, Jay Clark here with ERA Charlotte Real Estate, and welcome to Real Estate Explained. This is the video web series where I take basic real estate ideas, concepts, and terminology and break them down for you. So in this video, I thought I would just go over the general cycle of a real estate contract. This is one of the most basic things, and I thought I would just go over it with you. This is just going to be a general overview. Obviously, with a real estate contract, there are a lot of nuances, but I'm just going to kind of give you the broad brushstrokes that will hopefully help you get your feet wet into this process. So, of course, when how a real estate contract is initially formed is that a buyer finds a property that they're interested in, so they want to purchase it. So then they'll sit down with their real estate agent. The real estate agent will go over with them a real estate offer to purchase contract. They'll put out all the different terms and conditions in which the buyer wants to purchase the property. Price, do they want the seller to pay for any closing costs, make any repairs. They'll sort out all that, and then they will submit that offer to the seller. And then the seller and their agent will go over the offer. If they like the offer, they will accept it. If not, they will reject it. Or the seller might be willing to negotiate, so they'll send a counteroffer, which is forming essentially a new contract because they're rejecting the buyer's first offer, but they're sending a counteroffer. So then the buyer will look at that, and if they like it, they'll accept it. If not, they'll reject it, and no contract will be formed. So regardless if the seller accepts the buyer's offer or the buyer accepts the seller's counteroffer, a contract will be formed when both parties sign the contract and there's a communication of acceptance. Those things have to be done in order for a contract to be binding. And for real estate, if a term is not in writing, it is not binding. Everything has to be laid out in writing. You want the fridge to be left when you're buying the property, that has to be in writing. That's just a very enforceable thing. And so once all that happens, a real estate contract is formed. Then the seller has to make sure that the buyer receives all proper disclosures about the condition of the property and the oil, gas, and mineral rights. That those forms have to be sent to the buyer. And the buyer also has to pay out any earnest money and due diligence money that they've agreed to pay. That has to happen within 5 days of formation of the contract, which I will go over due diligence and earnest money more in depth in another video that might already be posted by the time this video comes up. So keep an eye out for that. But because once a contract is formed, what begins is the due diligence period. Now, this to me is one of the most important parts of a real estate contract, because the due diligence period is the period in which the buyer should conduct their due diligence. And it's very important that this is the optimal time period for the buyer to have an inspection done, a survey, pest inspection, any sort of investigation to the property, appraisal done. This is the time period to get it done, because during a due diligence period, the buyer can walk away from the contract for whatever reason. Whether they just get cold feet and don't want to move forward with purchasing the property, they can pull out without any negative consequences whatsoever. The only possible negative consequence that they might have for pulling out during this time period is losing the not being credited back for the due diligence money that they paid. Because you'll only get credited back for due diligence money if you go through with closing. But like I said, due diligence earnest money, I'll go over those in more depth in another video. But so, yeah, this is really the most important time period. And if there are any sort of issues that rise up in the inspection, this is a time period in which the buyer can negotiate with the seller to get those repairs done, and stuff like that. But I do have to remind you that here in North Carolina, we are a caveat emptor state. Buyer beware. All property is sold as is. So legally, the buyer does not have to make any repairs that the buyer and the seller doesn't have to make any repairs to the buyer request. Sorry, this guy's a little tongue-tied there. Yeah. So, just keep that in mind. That regardless of the condition of the property, they're sold as is. Now, the seller might want to make those repairs in order for the deal to come through, but they don't necessarily have to. So then, after the due diligence period ends, we enter, the final stage, which leads up to settlement. This is a time period in which the closing attorneys will gather all the pertinent documentation that they need in order to close. All money to be paid for the purchase of the property needs to be gathered, and final walkthrough will usually happen. And at this point, both parties are locked in. If they pull out of the contract, they will be in breach, either buyer or seller at this point. And then, and then we get through this period and settlement happens. This is when all the documents are reviewed and all monies to purchase the property are paid out. And this isn't necessarily, though, when the buyer gets possession of the property, because closing and settlement are two separate things. Closing happens when the deed of ownership is recorded, title. So, say if the settlement date happens on Friday at 4:50, most likely the county clerk's office won't record that deed until Monday. That's just the way things go. So if you typically want your settlement date to happen so that way the deed can be recorded right away. There are some issues and some stuff like that might happen, so just kind of keep that in mind. And you as a buyer, you can be allowed to move in before the deed is recorded, but that has to be a negotiated term in your real estate contract. But pretty much after the deed is recorded, the house is the buyer's. They take ownership, they're allowed to move in, and it's their home now. So that's just the general cycle of a real estate contract in a nutshell. There are a lot more detailed elements to real estate contract, but that's just the general overview. So I really hope that you have a better understanding. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Give this video a thumbs up so that way I can continue putting out these videos for you. I really love helping you guys with all your home buying needs. This is Jay Clark with ERA Charlotte Real Estate, and if you are looking to list or buy in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area, I'm here for you. My phone number is 910-257-1860. I would love to hear from you. I have links to my social media and my Zap webpage down in the information down below. So I really hope to hear from you guys and hope you are all having a great day.